The profound and wondrous Dharma is rarely encountered even in 100 million kalpas. Having it to hear, accept, and maintain, may I taste the truth of the Tathagata's words. Good morning. Today, I will bring up the first case, the first koan of the Book of Serenity, which is a collection of 100 koans, or 100 pivotal Zen teaching stories. And the Book of Serenity is, arises in the lineage of Soto Zen and is particularly celebrated and valued in Soto Zen. So here's the case. One day, the world-honored one ascended the seat. Manjushri struck the gavel and said, "Clearly observe the Dharma of the King of Dharma. The Dharma of the King of Dharma is thus." The world-honored one then got down from the seat. So that's the koan, and I'm actually going to put it in the chat also. So if you want to look at it as I talk, that's where it is. This is kind of a some koans seem like historical events, and some koans are more mythical events. So this is more of a mythical event that's maybe always happening. So first we have the world-honored one. The world-honored one, this is one of the epithets of the Buddha, the awakened one, or Shakyamuni, the sage of the Shakyas. So the world-honored one, the Buddha offers a complete demonstration of Zazen. Buddha offers a complete demonstration, or just a total embodiment of happening with everything. And so Zazen, or happening with everything, is an ever-present truth of our lives. And it's not something we can grasp or define or comprehend. And still, we talk about it, because even though talking about it can't get it, talking to Zazen, talking around Zazen, can be part of a path of appreciating the full reality of Zazen. And it can help us open to how right here we happen with everything. And this can make a big difference in our life. So Buddha ascends the seat. This is just embodying a practice of truth, or the truth of practice. And then Manjushri embodies how we talk about it, how we point to it, how we point it out, and try to offer some guidance. Manjushri struck the gavel and said, "Clearly observe the Dharma of the King of Dharma. The Dharma of the King of Dharma is thus." And so the first kind of bit of teaching here is clearly observe. Or this could also be translated as look close, or carefully investigate, or examine and regard. And the second character is the same as the Koan of Kanzeon. So that the Kanzeon is regarding the sounds of the world, contemplating the sounds of the world. Avalokiteshvara. So this Koan is the same. And I would offer that this is, it's observe sounds like, can sound like, well, I'm over here looking at something, observing something over there, something out there. And it's apart from me. And I feel like the instruction for me is it's more intimate than that. Or came up is curious. And curious means eager to learn. And I offer that there's an eagerness in this clearly observe or carefully investigate. So there's this careful investigation, and it's an eagerness of my basic seeking, my inmost request, my heart's deepest wish. What brings me to practice. A few days ago, I woke up from a dream where the last image was a bus teetering on a kind of sharp peak of a big mountain. And as I woke up, there was a thought in my mind. And it was something like, faith is not believing something. Faith is not believing that things will be okay or that it's all going to turn out fine. Faith is being curious enough about it, to do it completely. And so as a bus, or maybe in a bus, teetering on top of a tall mountain, I feel encouraged by this dream thought, encouraged to do something, not with a faith of just believing or grasping to an idea that it'll be okay, but with a faith of curiosity, and a faith of my based in my heart's deepest seeking. And it does not know. So, and there's love. Curious has the same etymology as caring, and also cure. So I thought curiosity is the cure of caring without certainty. So coming back, to this story, I allow my curiosity or my heart's deepest wanting to live through my investigation, my observing, my inquiry. And this investigation and inquiry is directed to what Manjushri calls the Dharma of the King of Dharma, or the Dharma of awakening, the truth or life or practice of awakening. And Manjushri also says a little more. He says, this Dharma, this truth, this life, this practice is thus. So how is Zazen? It is thus. How is awakening? It is thus. We can't really, since we can't really define it or get all the way around it, we just say thus. And thusness is this, it's actually it's a technical term in Buddhism. Emptiness is about how anything is empty of existing on its own. Thusness is about how anything is a fullness of happening with everything. And so they're the synonyms. And so we have the Buddha and we have Manjushri. And there's, I would offer that there's always a kind of tension between the actual fullness of being here and how we try to talk to ourselves and talk to each other about this fullness. And I feel like I don't want to get rid of this tension. I want to take care of this tension and keep it nicely tuned and alive. And I feel this reflected in the verse. So in the Book of Serenity, Hongzhi, a Zen teacher, lived, I think, 11th, 12th century in China. He's a Dharma uncle in our lineage. He collected these stories and he wrote a verse for each story. And so here's his verse, or his poem for this case. The unique breeze of reality. Do you see? Continuously creation runs her loom and shuttle, weaving the ancient brocade, incorporating the forms of spring. But nothing can be done about Manjushri's leaking. So I'm also going to put that verse in the chat, a 4-line poem. There's a thing in the way. Okay. There we go. Okay. I really love this poem. So the first line is the unique breeze of reality. Do you see? So this unique breeze, maybe it's thusness, or just this. And again, like do you seeing this can make a big difference? Maybe the biggest difference. And Buddha's sitting right here. Buddha's sitting right here. Do you see? Clearly observe. Carefully investigate. Do you see? And the breeze is not something I see out there. And this seeing is intimacy. So you could say me seeing me, or me being me. And not just the me I know as me, or that I think is me being the whole ocean of me right here. You being the whole all-inclusive ocean of you right where you are. The second and third lines of the poem are continuously creation runs her loom and shuttle, weaving the ancient brocade, incorporating the forms of spring. And actually this image of weaving is sort of the reason why this talk happened. So it's drawing me in and running a loom and a shuttle. And I don't really know much about weaving, so I had to learn a little bit about weaving. So I thought I'd share a little about what I learned, which maybe everybody knows except for me. But so a loom, there's a set of threads that are stretched out. That's called the warp. And then there's another thread called the weft, which is shuttled back and forth over and under all the threads stretched out in the loom. And this is how you weave fabric. And the shuttle is a tool to make it basically make it just easier to get the thread back and forth. And I'm drawn to this as a kind of image of a process of inclusion and an integration, endless process. And I thought, these threads in the loom, one way I could feel that is all the aspects of my life and my being. And the weft is this thread of what's happening, the thread of the present moment. And so as this present moment is living through my life, or I'm living through it, am I including all the threads in my weaving, the fabric of this life, or what is included and what is excluded, and or what am I opening to, and what am I not fully open to? Opening to all the aspects of myself, and the threads I like and the threads I don't like, the ones that feel good and the ones that still hurt, the ones that might be accepted or acceptable, and the ones that may not be accepted or may not feel acceptable. And being whole is not a static state or kind of a fixed destination, but it's more like this weaving. It's a ceaseless activity of inclusion and connection, of always including more and more threads of my life and practice and intimate presence, and in an endless conversation of awakening. I can also feel the loom as an image of our collective life. We are each one of us maybe is a thread in this loom, and there are many threads, many wefts weaving us together with each other and others in myriad ways. And so, how does that feel? Am I willing to be in relationship? Am I willing to engage all emotions? Am I willing to open to the pain and suffering of others? Am I willing to open to the suffering of others as inseparable from my suffering? And am I willing to weave and be woven into the fabric of all beings? In the verse, the translation says, "Continuously creation runs her loom and shuttle." And creation is a kind of Thomas Cleary's rendition of two characters, which are literally a mother principle. And I looked in various dictionaries and places, and I couldn't find actually any place that talked about this mother principle being some abstract idea of creation. So I think this was a creative moment for Thomas Cleary, and but it also made me wonder, well, what is the mother principle? What was Hongzhi thinking of? And I was reminded of the Metta Sutta. Just as a mother, at the risk of her life, watches over and protects her only child, so with a boundless mind should you cherish all beings. And I also thought, maybe the mother principle embodies something about being maternal, being loving, caring, kind, tender, compassionate, nurturing, and devoted. And this activity of weaving and this inclusion and connection as an activity or a function of this love, this caring, kindness, compassionate devotion. And also, evokes for me again curiosity. And I also feel this weaving as a creative process. And so the next line of the poem, weaving the ancient brocade, incorporating the forms of spring. So these forms of spring, so new images, continuously being woven into this ancient brocade, where there's like the present unique breeze of reality continuously being woven in the ancient brocade. The forms of spring, the forms of new life, forms or pictures or scenes or moments of spring and summer and autumn and winter. The Buddha sitting right here today as you is unique, a new form of spring, never before encountered exactly like this. And this is not to say that, new forms of spring are always easy. This practice of inclusion, of meeting just this fully, can be a kind of, it is a form of work. And, for us for us conditioned beings, these forms of spring are alive, and they can be pleasant or painful, or comforting and or challenging. And I feel like my heart's curiosity is interested in truth, interested in this unique breeze of reality, and a living truth in our actual life together. So, and to fully meet this, we may need to summon great determination. There's a line in a poem by Guillaume, who's a Soto Zen teacher from the 14th century. And he said, "Feeding a blazing fire while immersed in the ocean." And I don't know what he meant, but I feel really encouraged by this, to practice in the midst of feeling immersed, feeling overwhelmed, feeling like there's too much, or submerged. In the midst of that, to feed a blazing fire, to feed my inquiry and my curiosity, to embody the mother principle, and keep this fire burning while being completely immersed in the ocean. While stressed or afraid or anxious or overwhelmed. Or in a bus, on the top of a mountain, or a bus that's sunk into the ocean, and being, curious enough about this to do it completely, or to be here fully. And this fabric is ancient. It is old. Generations or centuries or millennia. When we recite the lineage, we trace a thread of ancestors that spans over 2,000 years. Sometimes we also recite the Buddhas before Buddha, and then it spans eons. So there's this present activity of weaving, of intimate, inclusive awareness, of embracing curiosity. And right at this present is where this old fabric meets new life. And I feel like a sense of tradition in this, and a deep honoring of this moment, becoming the present life of the tradition. The present moment of practice arises from the fabric of this tradition, and is also something new, something particular to our life in this moment. And I feel this quality of weaving, of the shuttle running back and forth in daily practice, and waking up and going to sleep, and breathing in and breathing out, of continuity, and always something new, something undefinable in its fullness. And I also feel weaving in our weekly practice of coming together for Zazen and a talk on Sundays, and then dispersing into myriad activities and coming back. And this is another way of weaving in and out, and I hope, or what I want as a process of inclusion, of integration, and creativity. Finally, there's the last line of the verse, and it's a little different. It takes a turn, and it's something that poems can do. But nothing can be done about Manjushri's leaking. And leaking here it's another technical term from Indian Buddhism, ashrava. And ashrava, or leaking, or you could say leakings, because it's often lists of different types. But basically it refers to being driven by grasping. And sometimes it's especially evoked in like, even when we're doing something good, or even when we're trying to practice, we can be driven by grasping. And so this sounds a little critical of Manjushri. It sounds like it's saying Manjushri's grasping here. And maybe saying that anything we try to say about practice and awakening is driven by some subtle form of grasping, at least. And that's kind of, I think that's what the commentary says in the Book of Serenity to some extent. And I think it's kind of the standard Zen interpretation. But I think it can also just be an acknowledgement, and maybe an affirmation. Manjushri cannot give us and cannot actually point to thusness or awakening or liberated life. But his effort is still, we need his effort. And without that effort, how do we care for and pass on Zazen? So I think that nothing can be done about it I think we don't want to change that. Or another way of looking at this is that, like on one hand, there's this Buddha sitting, thusness or Zazen. And this is about a way of being in this moment, which can make a big difference to our life. It can be the difference between suffering and liberation, or the difference between being closed and tight and contracted and being open and awake. And on the other hand, if I grasp thusness as something apart from my conditioned life, this is its own special kind of suffering, a disease of emptiness, or turning Dharma into a pit. So in this practice, thusness or zazen or awakening or our true nature, it's not just my particular life. And, my suffering and my joy is not at any point or even a tiny bit apart from this thusness or zazen. So it's not separate, not the least bit separate. It's also not mushed together and indistinct. And this is this dynamic interplay of our life and awakening, and this like weaving, or breathing, or circulating, or turning in relationship. To me, speaks of how we engage this interplay. All right. So thank you very much. And so now we can have some questions, comments, expressions for a few minutes, and then maybe in about 10 minutes or so, we'll have a break before the Sangha meeting. So please, is there anything anyone would like to express?
Korin, when I think of this weaving,
Like,
I'll wait for Cindy. I'll just say
I'm
it's
sorry,
quick.
I didn't see her. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you, Korin. It was such a beautiful talk, and the image of weaving past and present and new and old, and yeah, it was just beautiful. And I mean, I love weaving anyway, and to use it in this kind of way was just very stunning to me this morning. So I just want to thank you.
Well, thank you.
What I was going to say is just, and Cindy saying that reminds me that when we've had Sangha meetings at the Zendo, and Cindy's often been the facilitator, she brings a shuttle, and that becomes our talking stick. It weaves around the room. But the other association I have is kinhin, literally means the weaving of the shuttle back and forth. And so when we do kinhin, we're weaving our life, we're shuttling back and forth, we're weaving between zazen periods, we're weaving together. So that's my association to the weaving, just to add something.
Oh yeah, thank you. That's great.
Korin, I'm still having a little problem with the word leaking.
Uh-huh.
It's strange. I'm thinking that maybe could there be another word put in there? And you were sort of saying that there could be. So why didn't they just put in another word than leaking?
Oh, why? I don't know why. I don't. The leaking. It's a weird image. Like a lot of the words for the afflictions. A lot of the images make sense, like brambles, bonds, chains, arrows. And they make sense as things that are kind of like things that you don't want. And leaking is sort of, it's not so, there's something, it's an interesting image of affliction. And I actually haven't heard of any kind of clear account for how that, I think we can guess, but it's an interesting term. Buddhism was borrowed from, I think from Jainism. And so it might have had kind of a specific meaning in Jainism, and then it came into Buddhism and kind of acquired its own new associations. And to some extent, for them, it just became a term, for leaking, the leakings, the three leakings. And maybe something that maybe some resonance, like samsara means flowing together. And that's kind of actually a beautiful image. But the idea was more like you're flowing through cyclic suffering. So somehow I associate leaking with some kind of flowing into cyclic suffering in this. Yeah,
that's pretty good. Also, I was wondering on the just a quick one in the koan, was that supposed to be gavel rather than gravel?
It's supposed to be gavel. Yeah.
I thought there was something that was, I never.
Yeah. That was a typo. No, I don't think that's in Clarity. I think that's in my typing. Maybe it was spell checked.
Korin, I just wanted your image of the bus on the mountain. This doesn't, well, it flows where it flows. I wasn't in attendance, but the story's been told to me a few times of when Robert Aiken's wife, Anne, who was dying, actively dying, and was asked, what is death? And she said, when the bus arrives, you get on it. And I've always pictured a yellow bus just pulling up, just step on, off you go.
I hope you got your will.
All the pieces. But thank you for sharing your dream image and beautiful talk. It has me it has me feeling very tender and grieving for change. Thank you.
Hello, Korin.
Hello.
I very much absorbed your talk, maybe more than some other talks. It was simple and so weaving in so much. Thank you for sharing your dream. The weaving and the tapestry is something that I just feel moved to share right now. It's an image that's real to me from being with the Japanese maples for so many years. And the word nishiki, I'm probably mispronouncing it. It's a Japanese word, Nishiki. It's a multicolored tapestry. And one of the most beautiful Japanese maples was a lace leaf. That's the dissected leaf that's very finely cut. Each lobe is very finely cut back to the stem, back to its beginning. And each lobe, each of those dissected parts of the leaf had slightly different colorations in the spring. More pink and red, cream color, even some brown, which seems, when I'm saying it, it doesn't seem springy, and yet it was, because it was delicate and it moved in the breeze when you talked about the unique breeze of justness. And I think of those leaves just moving out in the way they did, because that was how they were. There was no reason for it. There was the breeze, and there were the leaves, and they were the nishiki.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
A form of spring.
Spring.
Korin?
I can hear you.
Yes. It's different. I was intrigued by the last sentence of the Koan when it said the world owner one got down from the seat. What would that mean?
I guess I took that as for me it just felt like a way of completing the presentation. Like, you know, in some ways, like I look at this koan as in some ways like primordial ritual of zazen. You know, so the Buddha takes his seat, he does zazen, gets down, it's done, and Manjushri sort of points it out, because maybe no one would have noticed if Manjushri wasn't there and conk, you know, look, it's happening. You know. I think some people have, I think there might be some Zen comments that say that the Buddha was maybe, you know, like, oh, Manjushri, you doing this whole thing, I'm out of here, you know. So it could be a little, I think some Zen commentators have looked at it as critical of Manjushri.
Yeah, I was wondering. Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, I don't want to cut off things, but we do want to keep it, not have our morning get out of control here. So I'm going to put the closing verse in the chat. Where is it? That's fine. Okay. Four great bodhisattva vows, beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are infinite. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is boundless. I vow to realize it.